A maid walks down a quiet hallway, going about her morning routine. As she passes an open door, the camera briefly catches a glimpse of a woman's legs dangling in the shadows. The body belongs to Dagmar Brink, a young pianist. We never see the act itself, but her death immediately becomes the center of a void that the rest of the film tries to fill. Looking at this lively shot of Stockholm in 1950, it's hard to imagine such a grim narrative taking root. Post-war Sweden was experiencing an economic boom, filling the streets with a vibrant, deceptive normalcy. Yet amidst that optimism, director Hasse Ekman, seen here, decided to craft a suffocating, deeply pessimistic film called Girl with Hyacinths. The execution was so precise that even Ekman's greatest professional rival, Ingmar Bergman, famously called it an absolute masterpiece and perfect. On its surface, this is a straightforward police procedural about a tragic death. So why did a seemingly simple, forgotten mystery command such reverence from cinema's most demanding auteur? The film hands the role of detective over to Dagmar's neighbor, Anders, a writer who inherits her few possessions. Inside her apartment, he finds a portrait titled Girl with Hyacinths and a recurring name in her correspondence, Alex. Anders concludes that identifying this person is the only way to piece together the hours leading up to Dagmar's suicide. But to find the answer, Anders has to let go of a linear timeline. He must reconstruct Dagmar's life entirely through the fractured, highly unreliable memories of the people who knew her. The film adopts a structure heavily inspired by Citizen Kane, sending Anders on a chronological sprint through the men in Dagmar's past. He starts with Dagmar's estranged father, a wealthy banker who turns out to be emotionally distant. Then there's Elias, the tortured artist who painted her portrait but couldn't offer her stability. Next is Willie, a self-absorbed musician who focused on seducing her rather than understanding her. Finally, Anders tracks down Stefan, Dagmar's ex-husband, whose open admiration for Nazi ideology makes him perhaps the most repulsive of them all. Each interview is a dead end. None of these men are Alex. They form a gauntlet of failed relationships that highlight exactly what Dagmar wanted to escape. The men in her life aren't the only forces working against her. The visual mechanics of the film itself act as an antagonist. Girl with Hyacinths uses the strict rules of film noir. As this chart illustrates, oppressive shadows and oblique lines create unease. Lighting swallows characters whole, erasing identities. Finally, compositional tension establishes dominance, placing one figure high in the frame to visually crush the other. Cinematographer Göran Strindberg weaponized these specific techniques against Dagmar. He traps her behind the harsh lines of staircases and buries her face in darkness during her most vulnerable moments. The suspects in her life fail her narratively, but the shadows on the screen actively overpower her, physically isolating her within her own story. After exhausting his list of male suspects, Anders is left with nothing. His investigation stalls out entirely. Anders' wife, Britt, is the one who notices the detail that he overlooked. The person Anders was looking for was never a man. Alex was a woman named Alexandra. In 1950, a name like that couldn't be spoken in public. It was a secret that had to be kept behind closed doors, away from the neighbors, the police, and even the detectives. The central mystery wasn't actually about a failed romance with a man. It was about the crushing isolation of having to hide who you were from the very society you lived in. The story mirrors the real-life suicide of Swedish singer Ulla Billquist in 1946, a tragedy Hasse Ekman knew personally. Ekman had the creative freedom in Sweden to explore this reality on film. Across the Atlantic, the American film industry was operating under strict institutional censorship. While glamorous American theater marquees promised dazzling entertainment, the Hollywood production code legally outlawed any depiction of homosexuality or suicide on the screens inside. Girl with Hyacinths earns its status as a masterpiece because it took the established detective genre and flipped it. It used the literal, oppressive shadows of film noir to illuminate a truth that the rest of the world was legally forced to keep.